Lewandowski to MLS could actually happen, and two US clubs are already going head-to-head for the Polish star. Mbappe has officially beaten PSG, meaning Al Khelaifi is set to pay $60 million. Manchester United suddenly enter the race for Conor Gallagher. Are Spurs already starting to doubt Thomas Frank? And Pep Guardiola looks ready to steal Marc Guéhi right from under Liverpool's nose. We're breaking down all of this and plenty more in today's video. Lads, let's see if we can smash 350 likes. Your support really helps. Now, let's dive into the hottest transfer rumors. A Paris court has ordered PSG to pay Kylian Mbappe 60 million euros in unpaid wages and bonuses. And honestly, you could end the story right there if this wasn't one of the most toxic and, at the same time, most telling conflicts in French football in recent years. This whole thing dragged on for months. Mbappe went to court over money. The club didn't pay him for April, May, and June 2024, right before he left for Real Madrid as a free agent. The court established something pretty simple. PSG really didn't pay 3 months of salary, a signing bonus, and the so-called ethical bonus written into the contract. And those payments had already been confirmed earlier by LFP decisions in autumn 2024. Most importantly, PSG still couldn't produce a single written document where Mbappe actually waives that money. PSG tried to play hardball. Their line was basically, Mbappe acted disloyally, hid his decision not to extend his contract for almost a year, and by doing that, he deprived the club of a potential 180 million euros in transfer compensation. And just as a reminder, that's the same amount the Parisians once paid Monaco. But the court didn't accept that logic. Labor law isn't the transfer market. If the money is written into the agreement, you have to pay it. That's it. At the same time, the court didn't fully take the player's side either. Claims related to hidden work, moral pressure, and violations of the employer's obligations were rejected. Also, Mbappe's contract wasn't treated as effectively open-ended, which seriously reduced the potential size of compensation. So it's not a total demolition of PSG, but it's also not a club victory. It's worth noting that Mbappe's lawyers initially talked about a figure of more than 260 million euros. PSG responded by demanding 440 million euros from the player, pointing to a missed opportunity after he left as a free agent. Completely astronomical numbers, and honestly, it feels more like legal pressure than real expectations. The club also claimed that in August 2023 there was some kind of verbal agreement to reduce his salary if he left without a transfer fee, supposedly for financial stability. But as we've already understood here, without anything on paper, it's worth exactly nothing. The court confirmed that. So, the bottom line, PSG must pay 60 million euros, and formally they will comply with the ruling while keeping the right to appeal. Their statement is as cold and stripped down as it gets. This case is really revealing. No matter what status a club has, no matter how much money is involved, labor law works the same for everyone. And even in a world where footballers are assets, brands, and investments, a contract is still a contract. PSG basically backed itself into a corner by trying to operate in that gray zone of understandings and moral obligations. Mbappe left for free, yes, that hurts. But withholding wages is a terrible idea, especially when you then walk into court with no documents. Dusan Vlahovic is back on the transfer agenda again, and this time it's in the context of a possible move to AC Milan as a free agent. Spanish outlet Sport claims the Serbian striker is close to reaching a basic agreement in principle with the Rossoneri, and that Barcelona, for their part, have completely dropped their interest in the player. Very soon, Vlahovic's Juventus contract will be down to 6 months remaining, and that's the key marker. From January, the player will have the right to sign pre-contract agreements with other clubs, which means agents, intermediaries, and interested teams will inevitably start circling around him. Milan are genuinely watching the situation closely. In fact, they were interested in Vlahovic back in the summer as well. It's just that at the time, everything came down to money and Juve's reluctance to let the player go without serious compensation. Right now, Milan's center forwards frankly aren't convincing. Neither Christopher Nkunku nor Santiago Gimenez has become that stable, reliable source of goals you expect from a top club striker. In that kind of situation, the Rossoneri's leadership basically has to do something either in winter or already in the summer. And the idea of getting Vlahovic for free looks, on paper, way too tempting to ignore. There's also a separate point here. Massimiliano Allegri. Allegri rates Vlahovic very highly and knows exactly how to work with him. Their time together at Juventus was uneven, sure, but even under Allegri, the Serb still remained the key forward. He got trust, and he got minutes. As for Barcelona, it's pretty straightforward. The Catalans did consider Vlahovic, but only in the context of a pre-contract agreement and as one option among several. In the end, the club decided the Serb doesn't really fit their model, neither in terms of playing style nor the financial parameters. And there's one more important factor: the injury. You can't call Vlahovic's current season a failure, but you also can't call it outstanding. And now he's going to miss a few months because of a torn adductor muscle. If, after his return, he regains his form, starts scoring again, and becomes a key player for Juventus, the Turin club could quite realistically return to negotiations over a contract extension. You also can't ignore the financial side. This season Vlahovic is on a base salary of around 8 million euros, plus bonuses that can take the total to 12 million euros. Milan aren't the kind of club that hands out deals like that easily. More than that, in recent years the Rossoneri have been trying to keep their wage bill under control. So it looks a bit strange that the Serb is supposedly already ready to agree terms with a club that isn't known for being generous. So the overall picture is this: Milan objectively need a striker. Vlahovic is a well-known, proven option, and he's a player Allegri knows. His contract is running down, and the room to maneuver is opening up. But right now, this looks less like an almost done deal and more like a logical early-stage rumor. The interest is there, the prerequisites are there, but it's far too early to talk like anything is decided. Vlahovic still has to prove on the pitch that he's still the kind of forward worth bending a club's financial model for. Manchester United are seriously pushing forward with a move for Conor Gallagher, and the objective is very clear: fix the midfield situation as early as January. According to Team Talk, United are currently one of the frontrunners for the Atletico Madrid midfielder. And this isn't just casual interest. There is active work going on behind the scenes to explore how this deal could be structured and pushed forward in the winter window. Gallagher is one of the most closely watched names on the market right now. 3 or 4 other Premier League clubs are monitoring the situation very closely, and the idea of a January return to England is starting to feel increasingly realistic. One major factor here is the World Cup. For Gallagher, making the final England squad is absolutely crucial, and that could easily become the main trigger for a move in January. Thomas Tuchel values players with relentless intensity and work rate, but even those qualities mean very little without regular minutes. And right now, playing time is Gallagher's biggest issue in Madrid. Atletico paid around 42 million euros for him in the summer of 2024, but under Diego Simeone, the English midfielder has yet to become a central piece of the system. His role has mostly been limited to substitute appearances, occasional starts, and a clear lack of rhythm. In that context, a return to the Premier League looks like the most logical step. Tottenham, Everton, and Newcastle are all prepared to offer Gallagher a guaranteed starting role, which means consistent minutes and a clear pathway back into the England manager's thinking. Atletico's position on the situation is fairly pragmatic. Ideally, the club would prefer a permanent sale to recoup part of their investment. However, a loan move has not been ruled out, especially if the player himself begins to push more aggressively for an exit. Earlier, Manchester United were prepared to move for Gallagher on a permanent basis, but priorities have shifted slightly. A potential January departure for Manuel Ugarte could significantly change the picture. If that happens, the need for a midfield replacement becomes immediate, and in that scenario, Gallagher is viewed as one of the leading candidates to step in for the second half of the season. From United's perspective, the profile makes complete sense. Gallagher knows the Premier League inside out, brings elite work rate, intensity, and pressing, and is comfortable operating in multiple midfield roles. Inside the club, the idea being discussed is a classic try-before-you-buy solution. Bring him in on loan now, with an option or obligation to make the move permanent in the summer if everything clicks. Atletico are open to discussing a full sale, and Gallagher himself is actively exploring his options. If the player increases the pressure and United arrive with a flexible deal structure, this move could very quickly shift from background talks to a concrete January transfer. At Manchester City, long-term plans rarely appear in the media by accident. If something does leak, it usually means the club is either testing the waters or quietly preparing the ground for a future move. According to the Daily Mail, Crystal Palace centre-back and England international Mark Guéhi has made the Citizen's shortlist to strengthen the defence next summer. And once you look at the bigger picture, this story actually makes a lot of sense. Guéhi's contract situation is a key factor here. He's set to become a free agent in 2026, which immediately puts him on the radar of Europe's top clubs. Last summer, he was just one step away from joining Liverpool in a £35 million deadline day move. But Palace chairman Steve Parish backed Oliver Glasner and refused to let one of his leaders leave. That deal collapsed, and since then, interest in Guéhi has only grown, especially from Manchester City, where timing is often more important than short-term hype. Quick pause here, hit the like or dislike button on the video. Any reaction helps a lot and really supports the channel. Now, it's important to understand that City's interest in Guéhi didn't come out of nowhere. The club has been monitoring him for years, dating back to the Txiki Begiristain era. And even after Txiki's departure, City's recruitment philosophy hasn't changed. They don't chase quick fixes. They invest in long-term profiles that fit the system. The context at the Etihad also plays a big role. John Stones is approaching the final year of his contract, and his future depends heavily on whether he can finally stay consistently fit. Nathan Ake's limited game time, combined with Manuel Akanji's loan move to Inter, already looks like the early stages of a defensive refresh. It's very possible that both 30-year-old defenders could leave next summer. With Ruben Dias and Joško Gvardiol already established as the core pairing, City don't need to sign a superstar center back. They need someone who complements the structure, not disrupts it. And this is exactly where Guéhi fits in. He's comfortable defending large spaces, calm on the ball, and tactically disciplined. He's already a regular starter for the England national team and understands how to step into midfield during build-up without overcomplicating things. In short, he's exactly the kind of defender Guardiola looks for. From Crystal Palace's perspective, the situation is difficult but clear. This winter, the club will likely face a choice: accept a reduced fee or risk losing Guéhi for free 6 months later. That could accelerate negotiations as early as January. However, City traditionally prefer patience and clarity over rushed decisions, which is why a summer move feels perfectly timed for all sides. City's defense has quietly reached a moment of renewal. Guéhi looks like a low-risk, high-logic upgrade. He's a proven Premier League defender who understands big club pressure and positional discipline. He helps secure the future without blocking it. Dias and Gvardiol remain the foundation, while young talents like Abdulkadir Husanov and Vitor Rice can continue developing without excessive pressure. Guéhi fits naturally between these age groups, and that balance is exactly the logic behind City's interest. The situation with Real Madrid showing interest in Diogo Dalot is one of those stories where you really shouldn't judge it by the headline alone. To understand it properly, you have to look at the logic of the market and the roles clubs are actually trying to fill. According to Team Talk, Real Madrid are genuinely interested in the Manchester United fullback, and from United's side there is openness to listening if a serious offer arrives. And once you remove the emotions from the conversation, this link makes far more sense than it might seem at first glance. At Manchester United, Dalot has always been an almost player. He's reliable, versatile, and rarely has disastrous performances. But at the same time, he never quite made the jump into the elite bracket. At one point, the club hoped he would grow into a long-term, unquestioned starter. That progression simply didn't happen. Right now, Dalot is a solid, mid-tier player for a top club, and there's nothing dramatic about that. It's just a realistic assessment of where his level currently sits. From Real Madrid's perspective, this profile is actually very logical. They are not looking for another headline fullback on massive wages. What they need is depth and flexibility. Dani Carvajal remains the first choice, but age and recurring injuries are an increasingly important factor. Dalot's ability to operate on both flanks immediately becomes a major plus. He can rotate at right back, cover on the left, and slot into the squad without disrupting the overall structure. If you look at it from Dalot's point of view, the appeal is obvious. A move to Real Madrid represents a new level and a different environment, a club where you are not required to be the star, but where quality, discipline, and consistency are demanded every day. At 26, this feels like a natural moment for that type of step. Even as a rotation option, the weight of that role at Real Madrid is very different from what it is at Manchester United. United, meanwhile, are also assessing the player's future from a strategic angle. Internally, Dalot is valued for his professionalism and availability, but extending his contract would likely require a significant salary increase. And that raises a simple question: does his current level justify that investment? His contract runs until the summer of 2028, with an option for an additional year, so there is no immediate pressure. However, if United are serious about rebuilding a squad capable of competing for major trophies again, difficult decisions become unavoidable. Moving on a player who never fully became a defining figure and reinvesting that money into a higher upside fullback could be a calm, rational, and mature decision. Real Madrid's interest does not change Dalot's profile, it simply highlights it. He is a player who can be extremely useful in the right system. The only real question now is whether Manchester United are ready to acknowledge that his development at the club has likely reached its ceiling. The situation around Thomas Frank at Tottenham is starting to feel uncomfortably familiar, like the club is drifting into its classic storyline again. A coach comes in with a reputation as a smart, system-based specialist. He gets that early vote of confidence, and then pretty quickly he ends up under pressure because the team looks empty. According to Caught Offside, there are already conversations inside Spurs about Frank's long-term future, and that's happening even though he only took over in the summer of this year. Officially, the leadership is still keeping calm. The owners at ENIC aren't rushing into any dramatic moves, and they believe Frank deserves time to implement his ideas and stabilize the performances. But that's the public line. Behind the scenes, the frustration is growing. Some key people at the club are worried that if they don't step in now, the season could just slip right through their fingers. And honestly, it's easy to see why they feel that way. The recent results look worrying. A heavy 0-3 loss to Nottingham Forest, draws against teams from the bottom part of the table, and no clear attacking rhythm at all. Tottenham are playing without a face. There's no sense the team even understands what it wants to be. The defense is vulnerable, the attack is choppy, and the pressing only shows up in short bursts. For a club that seriously talks about fighting for the top four, that's just not enough. With that backdrop, it's no surprise that the name Mauricio Pochettino is getting louder and louder. The Argentine is seen as the main candidate if there's a coaching change. Pochettino is still someone people in North London genuinely love. The 2019 Champions League final, a clear playing identity, the ability to work with young players, that feeling for the club, all of that is still very much alive in the fans' memory. Yes, Pochettino is currently the head coach of the United States national team, but the connection to Tottenham hasn't gone anywhere. He understands the club culture, he knows how to handle pressure, and most importantly, he knows how to build a team that has a face. That's exactly what Spurs are missing right now. At the same time, Pochettino isn't the only option. Oliver Glasner and Marco Silva are also on the short list. Glasner has impressed with how quickly he adapted to the Premier League. At Crystal Palace, he set up intense, structured football and led the team to an FA Cup win. He's a coach with a clear idea and the courage to impose it. Silva, meanwhile, has earned respect for his work at Fulham. On a modest budget, he built a disciplined, competitive side that regularly causes problems for richer opponents. All of this points to one thing: the question around Frank is no longer if, it's when and under what conditions. For now, he's being kept in place, but the trust is thinning out. If Tottenham don't start showing at least signs of a real playing identity in the next matches, those behind closed doors conversations will quickly become public. For a club that's been searching for stability for a long time, this will be another crossroads, and it won't be an easy one. Robert Lewandowski and MLS is a story that's slowly starting to feel less like fantasy. According to reports from several different sources, Inter Miami are preparing a serious attempt to sign the Polish striker, with the idea of pairing him up with Lionel Messi in the same team. Inter Miami aren't thinking just one season ahead. The club wants to defend its MLS Cup Winners' title in 2026, and they understand that the era of just Messi is coming to an end. Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba have finished their careers. Luis Suarez still hasn't decided whether he'll stay for next season, and Messi, on the other hand, has signed a new contract running until 2028. That's the key detail. Lionel has long-term commitments, and the club is basically obligated to give him a competitive squad around him. And that's where Lewandowski comes in. His Barcelona contract expires in the summer of 2026, which means that as early as January, he'll be allowed to talk to clubs outside Spain. For MLS, that's the perfect window. According to Polish journalist Marek Jóźwiak, Inter Miami have already started looking for housing for Lewandowski. People at the club consider the chances of the Pole moving to the US next summer to be high. The sporting side also points toward a possible exit. Yes, last season Lewandowski scored 42 goals. Those are still elite numbers. But his role in the team is gradually changing. In the current campaign, he has 8 goals in 17 matches and 1 assist. More and more often, he's being asked not to be the main finisher, but to work for the team, open up spaces, and drag defenders out of position. On top of that, he started dropping down the hierarchy below Ferran Torres. For a player with that kind of ego and ambition, that's painful. At the same time, physically and mentally, Lewandowski is still doing fine. It also matters that Inter Miami still have 1 designated player spot left. So there's a slot available for a star on a big salary. But Inter Miami aren't the only club in this game. BBC Sport reports that Chicago Fire have had positive talks with Lewandowski and have already put him on their discovery list. And that's a very important point. In MLS, it means no other club in the league can sign the player without paying compensation to Chicago. So formally, the Fire are the ones in the strongest position right now. And Chicago have their own trump card here, the biggest Polish diaspora in the United States. It's no coincidence. Lewandowski has been made a priority target for at least the last 6 months. Lewandowski himself is open to a move to MLS. Salary won't be a problem, and he's got alternatives too. Stay at Barcelona if the club offers comfortable conditions, or head to the Saudi Pro League for an even bigger paycheck. It's still too early to say where exactly he'll end up, but the fact his name is being linked so actively with MLS says one thing: Lewandowski's era in Europe is getting close to its end. The only question is whether his next chapter is Messi's team in Miami or a more independent project in Chicago.